today, and so we will have a recording of this. We are recording today's webinar, and there will be a recording made available to the public following the workshop today. So with that, les quiero dar la bienvenida al taller comunitario para el plan para reducir emisiones comunitarios en la comunidad portuaria de San Diego. Vamos a tener interpretación, así que en un minuto le voy a dar el micrófono a nuestra intérprete Marisela Mioto para que dé las instrucciones. We will have interpretation tonight for language access, and so I'm going to hand it over to Marisela Mioto, our interpreter, to start with the instructions for how we're asking everybody to join today's meeting. So go ahead, Marisela.
Thank you. So I will go over a few accessibility features for this session. Because we are having the simultaneous Spanish language interpretation available, we would like to ask you to please select the language. In a moment, you will be able to see a globe at the bottom of your screen that says language selection, and then you can choose English if you are a monolingual English speaker, and the Spanish speakers will have the possibility of choosing Spanish. And this helps us to prevent possible interfering when there's more than one language channel. If you'll allow me 1 minute, I will explain in Spanish. Buenas tardes a todos, soy Marisela, su intérprete. Si están utilizando su computadora portátil o computadora de escritorio, en un minuto van a ver que aparece el globito al pie de su pantalla, y cuando este aparezca van a pulsar en interpretación del lenguaje y seleccionen el idioma español. Si están sintonizándonos desde su teléfono o iPad o dispositivo similar, busquen el menú con los 3 puntitos en la esquina superior, ya sea del lado derecho o del lado izquierdo de su pantalla, y allí pueden elegir el lenguaje español, y van a escuchar la versión en español en un 80% de volumen y la versión en inglés en un 20%. Si ustedes quieren apagar la versión en inglés, tienen que pulsar Mute Original Audio y así solamente escucharán el español. Muchísimas gracias y vamos a empezar.
Muchas gracias, Marisela. Ahora, Chuy, ¿quieres seguir con las siguientes instrucciones? Chuy, do you want to go ahead with the next?
Daniela. For this workshop, we just wanted to remind everybody, we'll be later into the meeting, we'll be asking for everyone's input. We ask folks to raise their hand if they have any questions, and we'll call on them. I see Alicia has a raised hand, so I wanted to make sure she's getting interpretation. We're also asking folks to use chat if you have any questions. Daniela and I will be monitoring them and raising questions as you bring them.
Alicia, ¿sí ya puedes escuchar el intérprete? We're just making sure everybody, okay, perfect. Gracias. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Gracias.
And then I also wanted to let folks know that for today's workshop, we will not be using the Q&A feature. So the chat and raising hand will be the main forms of interaction. So I'll do a quick overview of today's goals and agenda. So for today's workshop, we're really here for the APCD to present the community emissions reduction plan to the community. We're hoping to receive stakeholder feedback on the draft CERP Phase 2 strategies, as well as provide an interactive space for stakeholders to provide feedback. For today's agenda, after going through meeting guidelines and reviewing the goals and agenda, we'll pass it on to Domingo Vigil from the San Diego Pollution Control District to go over the CERP, as well as the CERP strategies. Following that, we will have a public comment and facilitate discussion where folks will be able to provide input and ask any questions. We have a couple of guidelines to help us get through today's meeting. We ask everyone to help create a space for everyone to contribute freely. We ask folks to step up and step back. If you find yourself not providing input or engaging, to please step up. And for folks who are comfortable in this space, we ask those folks to step back and allow others to join in. We ask folks to for only one person to speak at a time, for everyone to listen to each other and respect each other's opinions, knowledge, and perspective. We will do our best to be conscious of time and have everyone off Zoom by 6:30. And lastly, we do ask folks to please speak slowly. We do have live interpretation, and it makes her job much easier when we speak slowly and clearly. And now I'll pass it on to Daniela for our first poll.
Great. So we want to start today's workshop by finding out who is in the room here with us today, or the virtual room. So if you can just answer if you live in the Portside community, either you work for a government agency, you own or represent a business or in the community, you work for a nonprofit, you resident San Diego, or other. If you're an other, you can go ahead and put other. So we'll give a couple more seconds for people to answer that. And if you're only hearing the interpreter, it may be that you have the sound in the original meeting. You may have the original audio muted. So Montserrat, that could be the issue that you're having. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So it looks like we have a good amount of government agency staff with us this afternoon, and some residents from the Portside community, also folks who represent community-based organizations, as also just residents of the general city of San Diego who are worried and interested about air quality, and a few folks that are others. So thank you all for sharing. And then the next question that we have for folks is, what is your goal for today's workshop? I think that is a poll question that we're going to launch. So are you here to learn more about what the CERP, or the Community Emissions Reduction Plan, is? Would you like to provide input on the CERP? Or would you like here to connect with maybe Air District staff or other attendees? Or are you here for another reason? So again, we'll give folks a couple more seconds to go ahead and answer that poll. Great. So we're going to go ahead and end the poll and see. So most of the group is here today to learn more about the CERP. Also, some other reasons that maybe we'll have an opportunity to share with, and just providing input on the CERP also. Great. And so, and the next question we have for folks as we transition towards the presentation, I want to invite folks to use the chat box that you have on your screen. So at the bottom menu, you should have a button that says chat. And if you open that window, you can make sure that you're chatting to all panelists and attendees, so that everybody in both panelists and attendee mode can answer or can see your responses. And if you feel it's optional, if you want to share your name, your affiliation, and also maybe what is your concern about the air quality in Portside community. And this is just an invitation to share. It's optional, so don't feel obligated to, but it's just a space, we just wanted to try to make this, although we're in a virtual environment, make it as engaging as possible. So again, reminder, when you're chatting a message, make sure that before you send your message, you click on all panelists and attendees so everyone can see your comments. Great. So with that, we're going to transition now to Domingo Vigil, the Deputy Director for Environmental Justice at the San Diego Air Pollution Control District, who is the lead staff person working to help complete the CERP and manage the AB617 process. So if we go to the next slide, Chewy, and we want to spotlight Domingo, we can go ahead and hand it over to Domingo.
Thank you, Daniela, and thank you everybody for being here today. We really appreciate the time you are taking to collaborate with us in putting together the Community Emissions Reduction Plan, or CERP, for the Portside community. This effort is community driven, so your input is key, and I encourage all of you to ask questions or share any comments you may have on the plan tonight. We are currently under our open comment period, which will close in May 7th. So we encourage you to ask any questions, whether it is during the workshop or maybe if you want to email it later on, but certainly we welcome your input. Before going over the content of the CERP, I would like to set the stage by briefly talking about why we are here, why was the Portside community selected for a CERP, who has been working on developing the CERP, and just overall timeline. Next slide, please. So why are we here? Over the past decades, air quality in the region has improved significantly. However, certain communities continue to experience environmental and health inequities from air pollution. So to help address these inequities, Assembly Bill 617 was signed into law in July of 2017. And this bill established the Community Air Protection Program and requires new community-focused and community-driven actions that go beyond existing state and regional programs to reduce air pollution and improve public health in communities that experience disproportionate burdens from exposure to air pollutants. The Community Air Protection Program requires community air monitoring, community emission reduction plans, and incentive funding to deploy clean technologies in the most impacted areas. Next slide, please. So why was the Portside community selected? The Portside community, which includes Sherman Heights, Logan Heights, Barrio Logan, and West National City, was selected because it experiences higher levels of pollution burden and vulnerability than most communities in California, according to the state's Community Environmental Health Screening Tool, CalEnviroScreen 3.0. CalEnviroScreen is a science-based mapping tool developed by the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, or OEHA, and the California Environmental Protection Agency, or CalEPA, that helps identify California communities that are most affected by sources of pollution and that are often especially vulnerable to pollution's effects. CalEnviroScreen uses environmental, health, and socioeconomic information to produce a numerical score for each census tract in the state. The criteria used by this screening tool includes things like level of diesel pollution, rates of emergency room visits for asthma symptoms, and levels of poverty, among others. So this slide shows the Portside community has high CalEnviroScreen ratings. This community includes 50,000 residents and a concentration of 12 census tracts with high CalEnviroScreen scores. Next slide, please. So in terms of who's been working on the CERP, since 2018, the APCD convened a diverse multi-sector steering committee to discuss community air concerns and potential solutions with affected parties. The steering committee supports active community involvement and collaboration in the development of the CERP, and it includes residents and community leaders, representatives from public entities such as SANDAG, the City of San Diego, National City, and the Port of San Diego, business groups such as the Industrial Environmental Association, and nonprofit groups such as the Environmental Health Coalition. To promote community engagement, the steering committee meetings are held monthly and are open to the public. Meetings have been conducted virtually since April of 2020 to comply with COVID-19 health orders. Next slide, please. This slide shows the Community Emissions Reduction Plan timeline. The Portside community was nominated for this program by APCD and was selected by CARP to participate in December of 2019. Since then, the APCD has been working with the California Air Resources Board, or CARB, and the steering committee to develop the portside emissions reduction plan. Last November, the Air Pollution Control Board approved phase 1 of the CERP, which included a set of early actions that are currently being implemented. After November of last year, APCD staff continued working with the Community Steering Committee to finalize phase 2, which is our current stage for which we are soliciting public comment to finalize the CERP. A final proposed CERP will be presented to the APCD board for approval in July. Upon approval from the APCD board, the last step of this timeline is presenting the finalized CERP to the California Air Resources Board for approval. Throughout this process, APCD has worked to engage the community through regular community meetings, workshops, as well as email, printed, and social media outreach. Next slide, please. So I'll just provide a brief overview of how the CERP is organized and in general what the content is for each of the chapters. And then we'll focus on chapter 7, which includes the actions and strategies in the CERP. And it's really the piece that we're very interested in receiving feedback from all of you. Obviously, your comments are welcomed for any other chapters. But I would like to focus our attention for the rest of tonight on chapter 7. The CERP is organized in 7 chapters, providing information on the following areas required by the state's blueprint for the Community Air Protection Program. Chapter 1, or on community profile, describes the portside community and why and how it was selected. Chapter 2, community outreach and engagement, describes the process to establish and convene the Portside Community Steering Committee and stakeholder and public involvement to develop the CERP. Chapter 3 is a technical assessment based on emission inventory data, and it contains a detailed discussion of community-level emissions and their sources. Chapter 4 is a technical assessment based on monitoring data, and it provides data based on APCD's regional air monitoring stations. Additional monitoring data is currently being captured in the community to continue informing air quality status and progress. Chapter 5 talks about APCD enforcement program, and it describes the program elements used by APCD to enforce local air pollution control regulations. Chapter 6 it's CARB's enforcement plan for portside community, and it provides CARB's review of 3 years of stationary and mobile source enforcement data to assess local air quality issues within the portside community. Finally, chapter 7 on actions and strategies. The proposed CERP actions in this chapter define a path to further reduce air pollution from sources in the community. So this chapter includes overall goals for the CERP, and it will be the main focus of today's workshop. Next slide, please. This table provides a list of the main agencies with an implementing role in the CERP. The CERP calls for individual efforts of these agencies or collaboration among them to implement the actions in the CERP. And tonight we have representatives from each of these agencies to help us answer any questions that may come up regarding their roles in the CERP. Next slide, please. This slide is just a continuation of that list, and it shows the rest of the agencies involved in implementing the CERP. The CERP includes aspirational goals intended to guide the community members, businesses, organizations, and government agencies partnering in the implementation of the CERP to support health and environmental justice in the portside community. The overall goals identify the direction in which the community wants to go to achieve emission reductions beyond regulatory requirements. Now let's go over the CERP strategies. Next slide, please. As shown earlier, as part of our timeline, phase 1 was adopted by the APCD board, and it includes actions under the categories you see on the slide. Actions under these categories also include public feedback through public meetings and workshops, and received unanimous support by the Portside Community Steering Committee. For this reason, I won't review these actions today, but I will share some early successes, especially given the interest in our outreach and community engagement piece. Under this category, an Office of Environmental Justice was established within the APCD by dedicating 2 full-time positions to expand EJ efforts in the region. A framework is currently being developed for this office. Under our incentive strategies, we have funded projects in the portside community, which include cleaner school buses and an electric tugboat. We're also developing an incentive program to provide air filtration systems to households within the portside community. Phase 1 also included early commitments from other entities, such as the port, shipyards, and the Navy. As part of this commitment, the port has deployed a total of 5 zero-emission trucks in 2 marine terminals within the portside community, and is currently working on achieving additional emission reductions from replacing older cargo handling equipment and from a number of additional projects. The shipyards have implemented policies requiring air compressors to be powered by zero-emission technology or Tier 4 engines. And the Navy is operating in-port ships on shore power to the fullest extent practical when ported at the base. These early commitments and results are a true testament of the collaborative approach of CERP partners and reflect the value of community input in informing air quality priorities in the portside community. Next slide, please. So I'd like to center our discussion today on phase 2 strategies, which have not yet been approved by the APCD board and have been in the main area of focus and refinement since phase 1 was adopted last November. Phase 2 actions are classified under the following categories: heavy-duty truck strategies, ensuring fair outcomes for land use strategies, working waterfront, and advocacy strategies. So let's go over them one by one. So first of all, heavy-duty trucks. To reduce truck emissions and exposure to those emissions in the portside communities, actions under the heavy-duty trucks category support electric trucks and charging infrastructure, support dedicated truck routes in the community to minimize exposure to at-risk populations, provide for the needs of truck drivers and businesses that rely on them, and ensure fair outcomes for truck drivers regarding incentives, and promote enforcement of mobile source air quality rules. Next slide, please. Actions under the land use category provide for reduced exposure through improved community planning, transportation planning, development of additional community green space, indoor air filtration, enforcement of truck regulations, as well as further study of the health inequities in the communities. Some of these actions call for the development and adoption of community plan documents, which provide commercial land uses and zoning that serve as a buffer between sensitive receptors and sources of toxic air contaminants, as well as additional green space in the communities. Next slide, please. Actions under the working waterfront activities category focus on reducing emissions associated with activities from the Port of San Diego, shipyards, and US Navy. These entities made early commitments in phase 1 of the CERP and have already had some accomplishments as shared earlier. Additional actions include reducing emissions from cargo handling equipment, commercial hovercraft, ship repair activities, employee transportation, and promoting early adoption of zero-emission technologies. Next slide, please. So finally, our advocacy measures. Some measures require a commitment by an agency that cannot be made until after a public process. For example, the adoption of land use and transportation planning documents. The only action the APCD and the steering committee can take is to support an outcome that will improve air quality in the port side, all disadvantaged communities or the region. For this reason, we have included advocacy measures that support emission reduction opportunities in all the different categories discussed in the CERP. Advocacy will be a key strategy to implement the CERP because it will be the vehicle through which the community can continue to engage with policymakers to support projects that align with the goals and actions proposed in the CERP. Advocacy work will also be the main way the community can continue to engage in decision-making processes beyond the 5-year implementation timeline of the CERP. Next slide, please. So finally, our next steps. As I mentioned earlier, we're currently on our open public comment period, which closes on May 7th. So I encourage everybody to provide us with your comments and input on the plan and the strategies. We will consider the public input and make changes to the CERP as appropriate in the coming months. And then in May, we will present an update to our APCD board to provide information on how the CERP is shaping up, as well as some of the feedback that we've received. Finally, we'll present the final CERP in July to our board, and then subsequently we will submit it to CARB in August. After CARB's approval, we will start our 5-year implementation phase, which will take us to implement all of the different measures and actions in the CERP. So with that, I think we are ready for questions, and I will turn it over to our facilitators.
Great, thank you, Domingo. And if you can go to the next slide, Chuy. So for this next portion of the meeting, we really want to open it up for public comment and facilitated discussion and create a space for people to ask questions and share your input. Start my video. Oh, sorry, thank you. So if you can now go to the next slide, Chuy. So when you had people register for this evening's workshop, we asked you to please select the topics of the CERP that you were most interested in discussing. So at our last check at the 4 o'clock, we had a lot of, these are the results of the answers of everyone who registered for this evening. As you can see, we had a lot of interest in community engagement for the CERP. And community participation and engagement is a critical piece of this program and process. And although it's a phase 1 strategy that was approved by the board already, it's being implemented throughout the whole process of this AB617 steering committee. Domingo was hired as a result of the creation of the position for the Office of Environmental Justice, and Monica Melgoza, also, who is the communications program coordinator now at the Air District, are dedicated staff to help increase the participation in not just this program, but throughout making sure environmental justice is throughout the Air PCD. The other strategies that were of most interest to folks who registered for this evening's workshop were the working waterfront and also the land use and heavy duty truck. So as part of this conversation for this evening's workshop, we're going to focus, we're going to start creating a space. So we'll dedicate we'll dedicate about 15 minutes to working waterfront, then we'll move on to land use and heavy duty trucks. And then we can open up the rest of the space for folks to talk about the other strategies, rural development, incentives, and advocacy. Enforcement also was of high interest, and again is an ongoing effort by the Air District, and was also part of a phase 1 strategy that was approved by the board in earlier this year. So again, today we're focusing on phase 2 strategies. So if you go to the next slide, though, first, before we open up for facilitated discussion, we also wanted to flag that, we had some questions that folks also submitted when they registered. So we, these questions range from, we have some people who are new to the area and are, maybe wondering if the allergic responses they're having are to the air, related to the air quality. There's some questions about why are older cars exempt from smog, and will that ever change? Old cars emit exhaust in shared underground parking structures too. Some questions about what San Diego County and the city are doing to ensure safety, basic questions on how to reduce pollution, how to utilize air capture or carbon capture utilization and sequestration within the CERP potentially, and questions about how the Air District Compliance Division is supporting these programs and ensuring that they're staffed to do so. So some general questions that, I think as we go into the general discussion later, we can hopefully will get addressed and can share. If you go to the next slide, Chuy, we want to start tonight's conversation. So again, as I shared, we're gonna, the facilitated discussion will take the key areas of interest that we're most interested in order. So we're gonna start tonight with working waterfront, and then we'll take heavy duty trucks and land use, and then we'll take the rest of the time for the rest of the strategies. But so we're gonna kick off with working waterfront. And as you think of your comments, we wanna just, encourage you to mention, to highlight what is it that you liked about the strategies that Domingo shared? What is there something what would you like to see better? Or what is a question? What is something you didn't really understand? I think if we can stop the screen share at this moment so that we can see everyone with us. And for working waterfront, again, the key implementing partners there are the Port of San Diego, and the Navy. And I do believe we have staff from the Port of San Diego with us this evening. So here to answer any questions. And so again, if you have questions for around the working waterfront, we're going to invite folks to raise your virtual hand. So if you open your participant box, you should at the bottom see, if you're a panelist, you should see a hand raised. If you are in attendee mode, you should see your hand there. So great, thank you. Sean is demonstrating by raising his hand. So again, encourage folks to raise their hand. If you are unable to raise your hand, you can share your question or you include your name in just write your name in the chat box. But so since we do have a hand up, I'm going to go ahead and call on Sean. So Sean, I'm going to allow you to talk, and you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sean Ellis. I'm a representative for the United Association, the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters, Local 230 here in San Diego. And I guess my question is on a working waterfront, what is being done to change the actual fuel of the ships that are being utilized? I know we're focusing in a lot on the diesel particulate material and what it does to our great community of San Diego, our portside communities. Is there anything being done on potentially changing the fuel sources of the small craft ships and boats that are operating within our portside and our harbor? And where does carbon capture or air capture sit in for the cleaning out the air for those communities at the harbor?
Great question. And I see Larry popped up from the Port of San Diego, so go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, hi. I can take a first stab, and Domingo or anyone else on the line can help out. So we the Port of San Diego worked really closely with APCD staff on developing some working waterfront strategies for ocean-going vessels and commercial harbor craft. One of the things, though, quite frankly, is we at least my team hasn't spent a lot of time looking at alternative fuel sources. I do know that within 24 nautical miles of the state of California that there's a low sulfur fuel requirement for ocean-going vessels. But aside from that, quite frankly, we haven't spent a whole lot of time looking at that. So I bring that up because in addition to the AB617 CERP, the port is working on our own maritime clean air strategy, and we received several comments to that effect. So that's one of the items that I think we're going to want to do a deeper dive in to see that because the technology isn't there for, say, a lot of the ocean-going vessels or commercial harbor craft to go zero emission, there has been a request for us to dig a little deeper and try to identify some alternative fuel. So the short answer is good comment. Don't have any answer for you yet, but we're looking at it at least on the port side.
Thank you so much. And just to let everybody know, as pipe fitters and plumbers of Local 230, we're more than capable of delivering those systems. And, I always like to say, our biggest polluters are the ships, and that's an industry we cannot shut down. And I just want to share with everybody that methanol is a fuel source that can be swapped out with diesel, and it uses the same diesel cycle principles. And it's a way to really provide that green renewable energy. So thank you, everybody, for your time. I don't want to take up too much. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Thank you, Sean. And I'm also seeing that Joy Williams, who is one of the Dedicated steering committee members for the Portside Community Steering Committee is also entered in the chat that proposed state regulations will require zero emissions for ferries by 2026, and that other harbor craft will need to have cleaner diesel engines plus diesel filters. We have another question from Michelle Frigo in the chat, and she's asking, are ships required to plug into shore power when in the port to cut diesel emissions?
I can take a first. It looks like Joy also helped me.
And Joy's
she's our technical expert, but Joy, tell me if I get it wrong. Long story short is CARB does have regulations for certain ocean-going vessels to use shore power, and they're ramping that up as the time goes. As they're looking to increase those regulations and requirements in the coming years. So the next big milestone is for a certain type of ocean-going vessel, roll-on, roll-off, or auto carriers. So the vessels that call to the National City Marine Terminal. The next requirement is for them to have their vessels shore power equipped and alternative technology to have shore power for those types of vessels. So that the state is looking to kind of increase those requirements and ramp up that regulation.
Also, the shipyards as part of their early commit. Oh, sorry, I see Sarah. Sarah, I think I'd rather. I'm sorry, I'm getting some feedback. I see Sarah Giobi from NASCO there. Maybe Sarah, I'll turn it over to you. I think we were both going to say the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's correct, Domingo. I guess we want to make sure everybody understands that shore power is the practice in the shipyards. The ships are coming there for maintenance and overhaul, and we have the infrastructure in place for them to be connected to shore power when they're undergoing that maintenance. So just wanted to make that point.
Yes, thank you.
I just wanted to invite Joy Williams. I know Joy shared in the chat that ships will have to plug into shoreside electricity while at berth. So at least for that period, the ships will not be burning ship fuel. Joy, was there anything else you wanted to add on that for Working Waterfront, or is that?
No, I think between Larry and Sarah, they got that pretty thoroughly covered. Thank you.
Wonderful. So again, any other comments or questions about the Working Waterfront? Okay, well, if not, then we can open it up also for questions on heavy duty trucks section and land use. And I think we can just open it up for just all three of those. And if there's, if anybody wants Domingo to go through the strategies more specific, also we can bring up the slides if there's more questions.
Yes, Daniela, I was going to suggest that perhaps if we can bring the slides for attendees to see the actions that are being proposed, maybe that would help get some questions or comments.
Great. Chewy, can you bring up the screen? Thank you.
There we go.
So again, the heavy duty truck strategies, there are 5. The first is to advance the deployment of heavy duty on-road electric trucks. Also to ensure a fair outcome for small fleet owners, support dedicated truck route and avoid truck impacts to local community, increase number of truck parking and staging facilities with electric charging capabilities, and lastly, to ensure fair outcomes for truck drivers. So again, invite anyone to add a question or comment. Is there something missing? Is there something that you would like? I know we have some residents in the meeting. If you want to share what your experience has been in your concerns about trucks in your community. So I have in the chat, Michelle Frigo is asking if we can explain what strategy D2 means. For E2, is that, I'm sorry, do you mean E2? For heavy duty trucks. And that one would be fair outcome for small fleet owners.
All right, so for that one, basically entails evaluating potential regulatory impacts of truck replacements and maintenance on small fleets or subleases. There are currently rule-making requirements in progress for larger fleets to transition over time to zero-emission technologies. So with this action, we want to support the evaluation of what the impacts would be to small fleets and subleases to make sure that that those parties have a path to comply with any potential regulations, and that they have the support they need.
And Michelle, I see that you do mean D2. So maybe, Michelle, I'm going to invite you, if you want to, you can unmute yourself and you can ask your comment or make your question or make a comment. If you want to go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, I meant E2, but it keeps changing it to D2.
Oh, okay. So it was right. Okay. I wanted to make sure. Okay. That's what I thought. Okay.
So my sound changes to D2. Sorry.
While you were off mute, is there anything else you wanted to share or a follow-up question or?
No, I was going to ask a question, like if you're going to detour diesel trucks around the port side, what routes would you detour them to? That's one of the strategies, right? To make the trucks go around the port side so they're not emitting in port side.
It's supporting the dedicated truck routes to avoid the impact to the local community. So both the city of San Diego and National City have dedicated truck routes for trucks to that need to get to the port so that they are not impacting the community as much. And a part of this strategy would include coordinating with the cities to support enforcement of those truck routes to make sure that they are the drivers are aware of them. They know where they can drive. Two, that the signage is there, it's clear. And three, that there is enforcement action when needed when any of the trucks deviate from those established truck routes.
Have they been established already, or is proposed?
They have. Both the city of San Diego and the city of National City have established truck routes.
Is there a map available somewhere that we can see? And also in an emergency, let's say one of the roads is blocked, are the trucks going to be routed around that road?
Well, that's a great question. I think that for that, I'll have to coordinate with our colleagues from the cities to make sure that we get that information out. So one will be sharing a map of the existing truck routes, and then the second is to ask the question of how any potential emergencies would be addressed when the truck routes are blocked. Correct?
Because you could be potentially rerouting right through the Portside district, or backing up the traffic for miles and miles and miles, right? Either of which is not good.
Right. Great question.
Thank you, Michelle. I see that David Flores made a comment in the chat. Doesn't it also include education through port fleet operators?
That's correct.
So education is another component to make sure that the truck drivers are aware of the
truck routes, correct?
The truck routes that they should be following. That's great. So,
sorry, Danielle. I noticed that.
No, go ahead, Sarah.
I did notice that Michael Prince is on the line, and I'm wondering if he perhaps could help us get an up-to-date map of the authorized truck routes, potentially one that shows the final routes, because I think the map that's circulating shows proposed routes. And it also would be really helpful if actually the prohibited routes were sort of shown in red as opposed to green, because I think people generally understand that red means don't go there.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Michael Prince, Senior Planner with the City of San Diego. I'm reluctant to discuss anything as it relates to operations because that is completely outside of my wheelhouse. And so I don't know how best to respond other than to say that that the implementing departments, whether it be the police department or transportation, stormwater department, and the engineering staff, would sort of handle modifications in an emergency basis to deter both truck traffic and other operational traffic in those instances. But most likely it's public safety staff. To respond to sort of the question about mapping, absolutely, we are happy to share the maps that are currently in the draft community plan, which is out for public review. And I'm referring specifically to the Barrio Logan draft community plan, which is being updated and currently in process. The truck routes map shows the current routes, which basically are Harbor Drive, 28th Street, if I recall correctly, and then Wabash to get onto 15th. That is where trucks are, truck traffic that gets to and from the port and the Navy, and then from other communities, so as to avoid the neighborhood streets within Barrio Logan. There's additional restrictions within the community that were approved by resolution of the San Diego City Council in 2018, and those are reflected in the draft mobility element truck routes and restrictions map that's online on planbarrio.org. Additionally, at the last week's planning group meeting, we heard from a number of residents in the Environmental Health Coalition for a request to expand the restrictions to include a greater number of streets within the community, such as Logan, Newton Avenue, additional sections of Main Street, and then other streets that were not previously included on 32nd Street as well, on the map as part of additional restrictions to include in the plan update. Staff is in the process of analyzing those, and so it's still in a draft form, and we hope to have a resolution sometime in the summer in terms of taking it forward ultimately to City Council for City Council consideration at the towards the end of the year. And then just one more plug is that we will be sort of reviewing this information and providing a follow-up recommendation, hopefully at the May meeting, which will occur on Wednesday, May 19th of the Barrio Logan Planning Group. So I apologize, that was a really long, sort of winded answer to the question of probably where I just could have said, yes, we can provide you a map.
That was a great update though.
We appreciate your thorough response. I do see one more hand up from Sean Ellis again before we leave heavy duty trucks. So go ahead, Sean.
Hello, everybody. I see on E1 it says advanced deployment of heavy duty on-road electric trucks. Is there any plans in the future for maybe electric trucks and alternative fuel sources for other trucks, i.e. hydrogen trucks, or any other green fuel source that is going to be used as options? The reason I say that is, I think about as a worker that used to work in these shipyards. If I was to plug in my work truck for 45 minutes and have that lull, is there going to be options for these truck owners to provide a different fuel source and a different form of, truck usage, and even down the future maybe using hydrogen as for the heavy equipment in the yards? Is that something that could be a possibility for the CERP?
The CERP currently focuses on zero emission vehicles, mainly looking at electric, but it's currently silent on additional alternative fuels. So it's certainly something that we can explore, and we can have those conversations to see if that would be something that we can add as another option. But it currently doesn't identify alternative fuels as options.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments related to heavy duty trucks? If not, we can transition to the next slide, and we can to the next topic area, which is the land use. So I think the Barrio Logan community plan update is a significant piece of that. So again, the strategies here are to support land uses that serve as a buffer between industrial and residential uses in the portside community, to try to reduce exposure for sensitive receptors within 500 feet of the port, freeways, and industries, promote urban greening, public school exposure reduction, so reducing the exposure to emissions for the kids and school, supporting the Harbor Drive multimodal corridor study and land use proposals, the neighborhood resiliency and housing stability, so promoting resiliency for the neighborhood and stability in housing stock, improving transportation efficiencies, and also, again, as we mentioned earlier, diverting the trucks away from sensitive uses. Are there any comments or questions or ideas on maybe something that's missing here, or not clear, or something that could be improved? Or maybe just someone from the community that wants to share why these are particularly important for them. And again, invite people to raise your hand or write your name in the chat box if you can't find the hand. And I don't know if anyone from our panelists wants to share anything. We have many members of the Portside Steering Community with us this evening. So, this plan is very much been benefited from the input of the committed committee members who meet once a month and have joined subcommittees to develop these strategies before you. So I don't know if anyone.
Daniela, if I may make the comment, just a quick comment. I think that these particular actions is where our advocacy will be paramount. As I was mentioning during the presentation, a lot of these planning documents still need to go through their own public process. So it will be very important to continue engaging with all these different planning processes, so that as the Portside community, we can advocate for the particular outcomes that we would like to see out of all of these different plans. So just wanted to highlight that.
Great. So I do see Montserrat Hernandez. Her hand is up. She's one of our steering committee members. So Montserrat would like to make a comment. And so if you are not a Spanish speaker, I'm going to ask you to make sure that you go to the language interpretation globe at the bottom of your screen and press English. And Marisela Mioto, the interpreter, you'll hear her interpreting Montserrat's comment into Spanish. So, Montserrat, si quieres pasar con tu comentario, y Marisela va a estar haciendo la interpretación en el canal de inglés. Así que si quieres, puedes empezar a hablar. Y asegúrate tú que tú estás en el canal.
Gracias, Daniela.
Okay, perfecto. Perfecto, sigue.
¿Está bien? ¿Empiezo? Sí. Ok, está bien. Bueno, sí, soy parte del comité AB617 y también soy parte del subcomité de uso de suelo. Entonces, la mayoría que somos residentes, tanto de Barrio Logan como de National City, que somos parte de este comité, y para nosotros era muy importante incluir esto que vemos aquí, ¿verdad? Tanto las áreas verdes, reducir esas exposiciones que tenemos en nuestras comunidades, porque tanto Barrio Logan como National City tenemos un uso de suelo mixto. Entonces tenemos industrias, negocios al lado de residencias y de escuelas. Entonces mejorar el uso de suelo en nuestras comunidades y tener ideas de cómo lo podemos hacer es muy importante, porque sabemos que es una fuente principal de contaminación, y los que vivimos en estas comunidades pues hemos sido impactados, ¿verdad? Por mucho tiempo. Entonces estas ideas vinieron de la gente de la comunidad, y pues creemos y estamos contentos con esta lista que tenemos aquí, y pues igual nos gustaría escuchar más comentarios de gente que no es del comité, pero qué piensan y qué otras cosas pudiéramos tener listadas, ¿verdad? Para poder implementarlo. Gracias.
Thank you, Montserrat. Muchas gracias, Montserrat. Great. So I'm also seeing an invitation for Michael Prince to talk a little bit more about how the Barrio Logan Community Plan Update will work to separate incompatible land uses over time. And Michael, if you want to maybe we add a spotlight to you and you come back on, maybe I'm also going to read out Silvia Calzada, another steering committee member's comment that on urban greening, a question if the U.S. Navy will be open to supporting the increase of a tree canopy and vegetative barriers. We don't have anyone with the Navy, from the Navy with us this evening, but Michael, I don't know if you want to come and talk a little bit more about the community plan updates plan to address incompatible land use over time.
Sure. So obviously, it's a rather substantial topic, and thank you to Joy and the entire EHC team and the residents of Barrio Logan for their engagement and involvement in the plan update effort. Broadly speaking, the current 1978 community plan that is in effect allows for a mixing of residential and industrial uses side by side, as we've just heard from Montserrat, I believe. And obviously we've heard that from a number of residents and from business owners as well throughout the plan update process. So based on an agreement reached between EHC, the shipbuilding and ship repair industry, and the planning group, the city of San Diego worked last year to re-engage the community around the community plan update to establish a compromise and identify uses that would be appropriate, that would transition from the heavy industrial uses on the port to the residential community within Barrio Logan, particularly along Boston Avenue, along Logan Avenue and Newton, and the other sort of residential areas that are in closest proximity to the Navy and to the port industry. So what city staff has done in that time has established basically a transition of uses where you have maritime commercial use, so commercial uses that are intended to support the maritime industry on the port, that don't allow residential and don't allow industrial, that those uses be included as allowed between Main and Harbor Drive, so closest to the port industry. Then transitioning further to other types of general community commercial uses, so retail establishments, offices, other types of businesses that would not allow residential. And then as you move closer along to Newton and Main Street is where the plan would allow for and encourage new residential development to address the community's housing needs, and also to sort of then having that further buffer between industry and residents. So that's sort of the basics of what the plan seeks to do, is building on the 2013 plan, which went through a years-long engagement process to identify uses consistent with the city's general plan and mobility improvements consistent with our overall city of villages strategy. But really to sort of the key thing is to separate industrial and residential uses going forward so that those uses would not be allowed in the future to be located side by side. That would address substantially a number of negative health outcomes that people do experience resulting from, previous instances and current instances where industrial and residential are side by side. So that effort, again, has been ongoing, not only the years-long effort, but the more recent effort to sort of address the area of compromise closest to the port, and establish those transitions. We've received, as far as I can understand, broad support from both residents, planning group members, and industry representatives for the draft land use plan as it relates to the proposed land use designations and the uses that are being identified. And so there are a couple of other components of the plan update that still need to be reviewed and revised in response to community comment, but the basis for the plan update does have broad support. And so we will continue to carry that forward. It is consistent with strategy F1, F3 here within the CERP, and in also F6 and even F7. It's probably even, actually covers all of them. So I don't know why I'm just picking out those in particular. But I do sort of want to mention those in terms of the work that we've been able to coordinate with the whole team, as well as with the port, with National City and with the Navy as we look at coordination. So again, I apologize. Those are a very long-winded response to Joy's probably very quick question, but that's sort of that's where we're at right now. And we encourage everyone to go who is interested to planbarrio.org. That's PLAN, and then barrio, BARRIO.org. And then we have our monthly meetings via Zoom. They're pretty well attended by residents and community members. And if there are others who want to attend, we certainly encourage that as well. There's a question here, sorry, that does for me, so I can go ahead and answer that, from Jack Monger. Does the plan eliminate the construction of housing within 500 feet of the freeways? And the answer is no, it does not. We have a number of areas, not only in Barrio Logan, but in other areas of the city, including downtown, in Pacific Beach, in Claremont Mesa, and City Heights. There are a number of communities throughout the city, and a diverse number of communities that do have housing that is within 500 feet. What is required, though, are siting considerations in terms of where buildings are oriented, the operation of windows potentially related to noise and air quality and air filtration systems that the building code requires. So there are a number of implementation techniques that can be used to help address the proximity to those freeways. But to specifically state, no, the plan does not prohibit new uses within 500 feet or new residential within 500 feet of Interstate 5.
Great, thank you for that, Michael. I also want to recognize that Tony Milani has had their hand up for a long time. So Tony, I want you to go ahead and make your comment. So you just need to unmute and you can go ahead. And thank you for your patience. And Tony, are you still there? You're on mute, so you just need to, on the bottom of your screen, I think you, where the microphone icon is, just press there and make sure it's not red. You are still on mute, Tony. I do see that Daniel Cummins has their hand up, so I'm going to let Daniel go ahead and then try to help give Tony some time to figure out how to unmute. So go ahead, Daniel.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you everybody for all the hard work everybody in the community and the planning has done. I know it's been a lot of years. I've been sitting kind of on the outside looking in and keeping an eye on things as everything develops. And Michael, specifically for you, in terms of within your presentation, you're talking about the planned use. I am a business owner and have been in the neighborhood on Newton Avenue for over 5 years now, or close to 5 years actually. And I've never had anybody come and reach out to me or the other businesses in our complex. And what are you proposing, or is there proposals for what to do with the businesses that are located on Newton Avenue and Main Street as well, and that will be affected by the proposal of the community? Do we just go away? Do we have jobs? We have, that we support people and employ people, as well as bring revenue into the city. So is there a balance? Is there a proposal on what to do with affected businesses with this proposal, and when is it? Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Daniel, for your comment and for your input. So as it relates to the direct question, is there a plan for businesses and for uses? So not knowing specifically where you are at on Newton Avenue, I cannot speak to what the specific proposed land use designation or zone is. We are proposing sort of a, it depends on if you're north of the 5 or south of the 5. And what I will do is put my email address in the chat and you can follow up with me directly. Sort of stepping back a little bit in terms of the outreach that we have done through the plan. So obviously there was the effort that occurred that started in 2008, went through 2013, which had a very robust community engagement process and ultimately led to a citywide referendum in which the plan was repealed, and it was notified to all the property owners and residents throughout that process. Obviously, we have been somewhat constrained in our engagement process because of the global pandemic and the restrictions that have been established in terms of in-person meetings. What the city has done in response to that is in order to move the Barrio Logan plan update forward, we have participated in online engagement through not only just regular planning group meetings, which is where discussions related to land use and zoning within the community occur. The Barrio Logan Planning Group is the formal or the recognized group that advises the city on land use matters and ultimately the city council. So in addition to those meetings, we have also established a project website with information on the plan. We have sent out a mailing distribution to all residents, or excuse me, to all residential addresses and all property owners and all ownership addresses. That was sent out at the beginning of the process in September of last year. And so this went to all owners of property in the area, notifying them of the plan update. We also put information at coffee shops and at the Northgate Gonzalez Market in the community. We did Facebook advertisements, next door, posts on other social media, as well as I know there's been coverage in the news media around the plan update effort. But obviously, there are limitations in terms of our resources to be able to go door to door and reach out to every single business or stakeholder. But we have sort of engaged in what we hope to be a fairly robust engagement process through that time. As it relates to sort of how existing businesses operate and how they can continue forward. The businesses that have an existing operation and are sort of permitted based on the rules that apply today or the rules that were established at the time that a permit was granted, those provisions will remain in place so long as that business remains in operation. We have what are called previously conforming uses regulations, which basically means that if a new zone would prohibit that use going forward, that use could still operate based on sort of the rules that were established at the time that the use was approved. So no business would be evicted or there would be no change to on the ground uses so long as everybody is operating legally. There would be limits on expansion and there would be limits on new uses if that use were to go away and for a period of time it sits vacant. Going forward, the new uses would need to conform to what the plan is proposing. Not knowing the specifics of your business, the specifics of your business and the specifics of your use, I can't speak to whether or not your use is going to fall into that category or if it's continuing to be allowed. But when I'm done talking, I will again throw my email address in the chat as well as my office line. And if you want to follow up with a phone call or an email, I'd be happy to speak to the regulations further.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael, for that really thorough response. We really appreciate it. And again, I think, just to reiterate that this is the CERP, the Community Emissions Reduction Plan, is a partnership of many partners and agencies working together and with different policies to help reduce the air quality impacts in the Portside community and, do so in the participation of the community and also with support businesses and, help create a thriving neighborhood in all ways. I want to try to see if Tony, Tony, I'm going to ask to unmute. I think you should be seeing a button that says if you unmute. If you want to go ahead and make your comment, if you're able to come off mute. If not, I invite you to use the chat to type in your chat your comment. Great. And are there any other comments or questions on land use? If not, we can switch over to the next slide. I think is a revisit working waterfront. So again, we didn't, when we brought this topic for discussion, we didn't have the strategies up. So just real briefly, working waterfront goals are to reduce the diesel emissions from cargo handling equipment, reducing emissions from ships at berth, reduce emissions from hovercraft, reducing diesel particulate matter and nitrogen oxide or NOx emissions from portable air compressors and other diesel sources at the shipyards, promoting best practices for reducing diesel volatile organic compound and other emissions from ship repair activities, reducing emissions from shipyard employee transportation, so promoting adoption of zero emissions technologies by port tenants, truckers, and other users of equipment, and reducing emissions associated with traffic at the Naval Base San Diego. So I'm just going to open it up one last time for if there's any comments on working waterfront that someone maybe, now that they're seeing the strategies in front of them, if there's another thought or question. Great. Okay, not seeing any hands or comments or chat. We can go out to the next slide, which is advocacy measures, which I think this was, you know, an idea that emerged from the steering committee with a desire to just, this is an ongoing process. And so like, you know, just for the steering committee to be constantly monitoring and supporting opportunities to reduce emissions in the community. And I don't know if there's anyone from the steering committee that, or the staff or the English wanted to add anything particular about this unique strategy.
Thank you, Daniela. Something that I just quickly wanted to share regarding this strategy. As I mentioned earlier, it will be very important in helping us move forward several of the projects and actions identified in the CERP. So for the same reason, part of what we would try to do in the next coming months and in the time where we implement the CERP is really help the community establish those relationships with all of these different agencies and be very familiar with the different engaging processes for each of the agencies, so that the venues for public participation are very clear and are easily accessible to the community to continue to engage in these advocacy efforts. So I just wanted to share that.
Great, thank you, Domingo. Are there any other questions or comments or ideas about advocacy measures? No comments or questions?
Thumbs up, thumbs down, that works too.
Wonderful. Okay, well, you know, we are scheduled to be here until 6:30, so I want to just maybe open up the space. If you can go to the next slide again, maybe it's just to repass. So the next steps are that the draft CERP can be found on the AB617 website. So I don't know if Monica, if you want to maybe in the chat box, drop in the link where people can find the document. Also in the Zoom invitation that you received this afternoon, you should have, there should have been a link for you to access not only the agenda, but all the other documents online from the community mission, for the community mission reduction plan. So there is public written comment that is open until May 7th. So that's next week. And the Air District is looking for public input and open to making changes to make the CERP appropriate to achieve its goal. Again, they will be presenting an update to the APCD board in May. And that is the new board. And I do see that we have a board member, Georgette Gomez, with us. I think that was, so thank you for being here with us. We want to present, so once the CERP approves that in July, it will go then on for review and approval from the California Air Resources Board at the end of the summer in August. And once that approval happens, there is a 5-year implementation program that implementation period that CARB has approved for the implementation of the plan. So I'm seeing that Joy has her hand up, and so I want to open it up for Joy to go ahead and make a comment. So go ahead, Joy.
Thank you, Daniela. So I'm Joy Williams with, I'm the Environmental Health Coalition rep to the steering committee. And, you know, tonight, of course, is for the public to make comments. So I don't have a lot to say. We'll submit written comments. But I did just want to thank APCD for including the overall aspirational goals that EHC recommended. And in particular, I appreciate how hard you all worked to keep those aspirational in nature while also working with, you know, the other stakeholders to make those, as acceptable as possible to everybody who's affected by these. So wanted to just acknowledge that, and acknowledge also, how you've already implemented the phase 1 actions, including the EJ office and the onboarding of the new APCD board members and starting the air monitoring and filtration program. So, just thank you for, everything that's has happened to date and everything you're doing right. So I'll stop there.
Well, thank you, Joy, for everything you've done to make all this come to fruition. Joy is another one of our very committed steering committee members from day one. So
yes, thank you. Thank you, Joy, for all your contributions and leadership too.
Are there any other comments or questions, or any other steering committee members that maybe wanted to add just a word of support or of perspective? Or any other of our implementing agencies that just wanted to share in the time that we have left?
I'll just take a moment to again thank Domingo and his team and APCD on all the hard work. They have been working very hard this whole past year, and also want to really appreciate all the resident and community involvement. So because these plans are really for the residents there. So I know we all have busy lives. Really appreciate people taking the time out to learn more about this technical stuff, and I think the phase 2 document is looking really good. So thanks everyone.
Great, thanks for that, Larry. So again, an invitation if anyone wants to make another comment. It's Cecilia saying, yes, thank you, Joy, and even after retirement, bless you for your commitment to this project. Silvia, another very dedicated member. I also wanted to Monica Melgoza, who is the Community Engagement Director, has really helped increase the profile of the Air District. There's now a Facebook group. If you haven't joined it, you can join that. Thanks to her, we are broadcasting this evening on YouTube Live. So there will be a recording of this meeting available for all through YouTube. We wanted to also, Monica, as part of the improving the community engagement and outreach for the Air District, was wanting to know, how did you find out about tonight's workshop? So we have another poll for you before we go. Did you hear about from a friend, a neighbor, perhaps, or many of you here for work, so through work? Did you receive an email inviting you? Social media? Did you get a mailer in the mail, or was there another way that you found out about tonight's meeting? So invite everyone to do that, and I believe you can do multiple answers. So if you got a neighbor and a social media post, then you can go ahead and respond there. So we'll give folks a couple more seconds to respond to that. And Monica, again, in the chat, thank you, Monica, for posting the link to Facebook. And I don't know, anything you want to add, Monica?
Oh, I just want to say no, thank you, Daniela, and thank you everybody for your comments and your contributions. I know this has been started back in 2018, and it's a team effort. So if you guys have any ideas or suggestions about how to better do outreach and reach the community and engage them, please reach out to me. I'll put my email on the chat again. And I just put the link to our Facebook website. So please follow us, give us a like, and that will help us tremendously. And invite your friends. Thank you.
Great. And Monica, it's looking like a lot of folks found out through their work and an email, friends and neighbors, and even some with the mailer, actually, 19%. So a good mix. So that's great. Also, and I see that Michelle's got an email from her work. Wonderful. So again, join the Facebook page, and I don't know if Domingo or if anyone else from the Air District wanted to make any closing comments, or if any of the residents that are with us tonight, if you wanted to add anything in particular.
Sure. Thank you, Daniela. I just wanted to, first of all, thank again all the members of the community and all of our partner agencies who are making the CERP possible. This is truly a team effort, and it's been a lot of work behind what we're all able to see in the draft CERP right now. It's been a community-driven process, and that's something that is very valuable because it's hard to find the time to get engaged. So it's really appreciated, but the benefits will be for the community, and it's important to have that piece and to have the community's input. And to that effect, I would like to just encourage the members of the public and others really to support the CERP by providing your input, letting us know how to improve it, what you would like to see in it. And we certainly welcome your feedback. Right now, you can submit any comments to us until May 7th. And I'll ask Monica if you can just put the email where people can submit comments on the chat so that it's there for everybody to see. And again, thanks to everybody for being here with us tonight. And we hope that the final product will be something that everybody can feel proud of and everybody can get behind on. And we'll look forward to continue working with the community on this.
Great, and a reminder that we'll be here again tomorrow at noon. We will be redoing the show. We will have a workshop for those of you who are able to attend during the lunch hour. It will still start at 12 and we'll go till 1:30. It will be presenting the same information this evening and offering a second space for questions and answers. And again, grateful to all of the implementing partners who will also be returning with us tomorrow. And again, thank you to Monica for putting her email and also her the APCD outreach at sdcounty.ca.gov email address for people to email their comments there. And just thank you everybody for joining, and thank you to all the board members, the steering committee members, the community residents, the business owners, the staff at APCD and other implementing agencies for joining tonight. Everybody has a piece to contribute to this puzzle. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and, should we go ahead and close out a little early, Domingo, or give 6 more minutes to anyone else last comment?
Thank you, Daniela, for your facilitation efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, everybody. We're going to go ahead and end this evening's meeting. And again, if you have any questions, you can email the team, and take care.